I never thought I'd be the kind of person to tell a story like this. For most of my life, I've been the sort who rolls my eyes at ghost stories and creepy internet threads. I've read enough so-called true accounts to know how much people embellish for the sake of a good scare. But what's been happening to me for the past few months is not the kind of thing you can laugh off or pretend is just in your head. I've tried everything. And yet I can't sleep without thinking about what's under my blankets right now. This started back in March when I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment on the east side of the city. The building is old, but not run down. The rent was surprisingly cheap for the area, which, in hindsight, should have been my first warning sign, but I figured the owner just wanted to fill it quickly. It was fully furnished, which was a huge plus since I had just left a long-term relationship and didn't own much more than clothes and a few boxes of personal stuff. The bed came with the place, a queen-size mattress, plain wooden frame, generic white sheets. It looked fine. I didn't even think to inspect it closely. Why would I? The first night I slept there, I noticed it immediately. Not enough to alarm me, but enough to feel odd. When I lay down, there was a slight rise in the mattress about halfway down on the left side at first. I thought it was just an uneven spring or some sag. From age, mattresses get lumpy. It happens, but when I shifted my weight, I realized it didn't compress the way a spring would. It was firmer, like pushing against a folded towel under the sheets, and strangely warmer. That part of the bed felt a couple of degrees warmer than the rest. Almost like someone had been lying there before me. I reached under the blankets and felt it with my hand. It wasn't huge, maybe the size of a small fist. The sheet was stretched tight over it, and when I pressed down, there was a faint give, but no movement. It wasn't like there was an object stuffed in the mattress either. It felt too soft for that, but not soft enough to be just bedding. It was like something in between. I told myself not to be weird about it. I was exhausted from unpacking and cleaning the place, and my brain was probably making more of it than it was. I shifted so I wasn't lying directly on it and fell asleep without much trouble. The next morning, I checked again before getting up. It was still their same size, same spot, same strange warmth. I pulled the sheet back and looked. Nothing, just the mattress surface, completely normal looking. I pressed down on the spot again, and sure enough, I felt the resistance, but visually, it was flat. That was weird enough to make me pause, but I told myself maybe it was just a dense patch in the padding inside. No big deal. Over the next week, I got used to it being there. It was like a minor imperfection you stop noticing after a while, but every now and then, I find myself absent-mindedly pressing my hand into it before going to sleep. The warmth was always there, even on nights when the rest of the room felt cold. It was almost comforting in a strange way, a little pocket of heat under the sheets. Then, one night, I came home late from work. It must have been around midnight, and I noticed something when I slid into bed. The lump felt bigger, not much, just slightly more pronounced under my thigh. When I lay down, I told myself I was imagining it, that I was tired and hypersensitive to small details. But the thought stuck in my head. I pressed it with my palm and held it there for a few seconds. It felt different, not just warm, but faintly pulsing, not fast like a heartbeat, slower, steadier, like a slow thud deep inside. I jerked my hand back and laughed at myself. It was ridiculous. It was a mattress. They don't have pulses. Maybe my own pulse in my hand was tricking me somehow. That had to be it. I turned off the light and forced myself to stop thinking about it. But the next morning, I swear the lump had shifted slightly toward the center of the bed, just an inch or two, but enough for me to notice without looking for it. That shouldn't have been possible. I hadn't stripped the bed or moved anything. The mattress wasn't the type you could feel something rolling around inside still. I tried to push the thought away. It was probably just my perception being off. The thing is Once you start noticing something like that, you can't stop for the next few nights. I kept checking the lump without meaning to. I'd lie in bed and let my hand rest on it. Sometimes it felt just like before, firm, warm, unmoving. Other times it felt softer, like it was relaxing under my touch. One night I thought I felt it shift ever so slightly against my palm, like something pressing back around this time. The dream started at first. They were just strange, vague things, the kind of dreams you can't quite remember when you wake up, but I always woke up with the feeling that someone had been in the room with me, standing beside the bed. Leaning close, I'd open my eyes to the darkness, half expecting to see a silhouette, but there was never anything there. One morning, I woke to find the lump directly under my hip. It was noticeably bigger now, maybe the size of a grapefruit, and the heat coming off, it was strong enough to feel through the blanket without touching it. That was the first time I felt real unease about it, not fear. Not yet, but the sense that something wasn't right. I stripped the bed entirely, sheets, mattress cover, everything, and ran my hands over the bare mattress again. It looked completely normal, no bulge, no discoloration, no sign of anything inside. And yet when I laid down on it, the lump was still there, exactly where it had been. It was like it only existed when Wait was on the bed that night. I tried sleeping on the couch. It was uncomfortable, and I tossed and turned for hours before giving up around 3 a.m. and going back to the bedroom. When I pulled back the covers, the lump was there waiting. Right where I'd left it, I lay down reluctantly, telling myself I was being ridiculous. But as I drifted off, I thought I felt the faintest pressure against my lower back, a slow, deliberate push. I didn't move. I didn't even open my eyes. I just lay there, heart pounding, telling myself it was nothing. Eventually, I fell asleep. The next morning, I noticed something I can't explain. The lump was slightly larger again, and when I pressed it with my hand, I could swear it felt like there was something inside it, not an object, not stuffing something. That shifted away from the pressure, something that didn't want to be touched. That was when I stopped telling myself it was just the mattress. The first few nights after discovering the lump had been a restless blur. I could not bring myself to actually touch it with my bare hand. I had convinced myself it was just something wedged under the mattress, a lost pillow, a bundle of laundry someone had shoved there years ago. But the unease kept gnawing at me. The thing was not solid in a way I could explain. It was soft in some places, firm in others, like pressing on a water balloon with uneven contents. That Tuesday night, I came home late from work. I had deliberately stayed out longer than necessary, lingering in a coffee shop, walking slow, pretending I was tired enough to collapse without thinking. But the moment I opened the bedroom door, the air felt different, heavier, as though something was pressing down on the room. I noticed it instantly. The bed was the same, the sheets tucked, the blanket pulled up neatly. Yet I knew before even glancing that the lump was there, bigger than before. I stood at the edge of the bed, staring. The shape had shifted. It no longer resembled a vague mound. It had a slope to it, a rise and fall that seemed almost deliberate. And the strangest thing was that I could swear it was angled toward where I would lay my head, as though it had been inching upward from the foot of the bed. I placed my hand near it, not quite touching, and the faintest sensation of warmth pulsed up through the blanket. I yanked my hand back, my chest tightening. It was absurd. Mattresses retained heat, I told myself. Maybe the room's radiator was uneven, but the radiator was under the window, far from where the lump now sat. The first true wrongness happened that night at 3:17 a.m. I woke for no reason, no noise, no dream, just sudden alertness. My eyes drifted toward the mound, and in the dim light from the street lamp outside, I saw it move. Not the sheets shifting because of my own motion, not the casual settling of fabric. It rose, slowly, subtly, as though something underneath was taking a slow, deliberate breath. I froze, unable to breathe myself. The air in the room seemed to tighten around me, and an unnatural stillness filled my ears, the kind that comes before something happens. I stayed like that for what felt like hours, eyes locked on the almost imperceptible lift and fall of the blanket. I thought about running. I thought about tearing it back to see what was underneath, but I couldn't make myself do either. When morning came, the bed looked perfectly normal again. I told myself I had imagined the movement, that it was just my own shallow breathing making the blanket shift. That night, I considered sleeping on the couch. I even went so far as to drag a pillow into the living room. But just before midnight, I caught sight of my bedroom door slightly ajar, the darkness inside looking deeper than it should, and I had the irrational thought that whatever was in the bed wouldn't like me avoiding it. That thought scared me more than the lump itself. By the fourth night, the lump was undeniably larger, easily the size of a curled-up person. It was also closer to the top of the bed than it had been before. The sensation of being watched was constant now, especially when I was in the room alone. Sometimes, out of the corner of my eye, I thought I saw the blanket twitch, not in a random way, but with intent, as though it was trying to get my attention. I started sleeping less, staying up late in the kitchen with the lights on, pretending to scroll on my phone. Once or twice, I thought I heard faint noises coming from the bedroom, a slow creak like weight shifting on a mattress, or a muffled sound that could have been fabric being dragged. The worst was the fifth night. I woke up to find myself lying on my side, facing the mound, my hand resting on top of it. I didn't remember moving in my sleep, and the warmth under my palm was immediate, almost human. But it was not the warmth of skin. It was deeper, pulsing, a steady beat like a slow, heavy heartbeat. The realization hit me so hard I snatched my hand away and rolled onto my back. My pulse thundered in my ears. I didn't dare get out of bed. Some primal instinct told me that if I moved too quickly, it would know. So I lay there, eyes wide open until the sun began to creep through the blinds. In the daylight, my mind tried to rationalize again. Old houses made noises. Beds shifted. Maybe the old springs in the mattress were uneven and compressed differently. I decided I'd sleep somewhere else that night, but by evening, I found myself standing at the bedroom door again, drawn in despite every warning bell in my head. The mound looked smaller now, as if it had retreated, but something about that felt worse, as though it was aware of me watching and didn't want me to see its full shape. That night, I slept in the bed again, and for the first time, I dreamed. I was lying exactly where I was in reality, the mound beside me. In the dream, the blanket slowly peeled back on its own, revealing not a human form, but something pale and smooth, like swollen flesh. And right in the center, a seam began to open, revealing a single, lidless eye staring straight at me. When I woke, my hand was back on the lump, and this time it was moving. The nights had become unbearable even during the day. I felt a strange heaviness in my chest, like my lungs had to work harder than they should. The air in the bedroom carried a smell I couldn't place. It was faint, but constant, a mix between damp fabric and something sour. Every time I stripped the sheets to wash them, I expected to see mold or some rotting scrap forgotten in the folds, but the mattress looked clean untouched, but that lump, it was still there. And worse now, it was bigger at first it had. Been the size of a clenched fist tucked into the far corner of the bed, where my feet would be, but now it seemed to have stretched closer toward my side of the bed. The first time I noticed this, I almost convinced myself it was just the mattress shifting from age or pressure, but when I pressed my palm into the spot, I could swear I felt something softer under the padding, something that gave a little then resisted, like pressing on muscle that night. I couldn't sleep. My mind kept pulling back to that spot. Every time I turned over, I thought I heard the faintest rustle, not from the blanket, but from under it, like something shifting in its own slow way. The heat from that part of the bed was strange too, not the warmth of my body, but a steady, radiating heat that didn't fade. Even when I moved away, by the fourth night the dreams started, I'd see the bed from above, as if floating over it. The blanket would be perfectly still, then a rise would appear in the center, a slow lift like breath under fabric. My perspective would lower closer and closer until I was staring at the bump inches away, and then I would see it. It wasn't a lump of fabric or stuffing. It had the faint contour of a face, a forehead, the curve of a cheek, a mouth that twitched in something too slow to be speech, but too purposeful to be random. The first time I had this dream, I woke in a cold sweat. I turned the light on and yanked the blanket off the mattress, stared back at me flat and empty, no lump, no sign of anything at all. I almost laughed it off until I touched the spot and felt it warm, much warmer than the rest of the bed. I started avoiding sleep. I'd spend late nights scrolling through my phone or watching pointless videos until my eyelids hurt, but exhaustion always caught me, and when it did, the dreams returned, each one sharper than the last. Sometimes the face was clearer, sometimes it was further developed with deeper hollows. Where I should be, I swear, in the last dream, it opened one of them just for a second. By the second week, I began noticing the noises were changing to no longer the faint rustle. Instead, there were muffled thuds like knuckles tapping from under the bed frame. But directly beneath the lump, it happened mostly at night. But once during the afternoon, while I sat reading in the chair near the window, I heard it and froze. The tapping was deliberate, in rhythm, 3 slow knocks, then silence, then 3 again. The idea of lifting the mattress crossed my mind more than once, but something in me resisted, not fear exactly, but a heavy certainty that if I disturbed whatever was underneath, it would acknowledge me fully. Like right now, it was content to exist in half awareness, but a direct confrontation might be an invitation I didn't want to give. That was when the marks started appearing, small distortions on the sheet over the lump, like tiny indentations, as if something with fingers had been pressing upward. From below the first time, there were just 2 shallow dips, barely noticeable. I smoothed them out with my hand, telling myself it was creased fabric, but the next morning there were more, 4 in a curved line, all uniform in size and spacing, like knuckles pressing from the inside. I washed the sheets 3 times a week. Every time I remade the bed, the marks came back overnight. I started sleeping on the couch. My back hated it, and my eyes burned for lack of rest, but I couldn't be in that room at night. Still, even from the living room, I swore I could hear something shifting faintly upstairs. I tried music, I tried the TV on low, but sometimes through the white noise I'd hear the muffled thud, thud, thud. 2 nights ago, I caved. I went into the bedroom around midnight holding my phone flashlight. The lump was there, bigger than I'd ever seen. It rose in a clear arc now, almost like someone curled up under the blanket. The indentations were deeper, longer. They didn't look like fingers anymore, They looked like a hand-pressed flap from underneath, each digit perfectly distinct. I didn't touch it. I didn't speak. I just backed out of the room and shut the door. Last night something changed. I woke up on the couch around 3 a.m. The house was silent then. I heard a slow, dragging sound coming from upstairs, not footsteps, not quite scraping, more like fabric shifting across fabric, then a heavy, dull thud that shook the ceiling. Once, when I went up to check, the bed was empty. The lump was gone. The mattress was completely flat, but the sheets were warm, and on the pillow next to mine, there was a single deep indentation, the perfect size and shape of a head resting there. I didn't sleep at all after that. I think whatever's been under the mattress doesn't want to stay there anymore. I had stopped sleeping in my bed by the time the 4th week began. It wasn't just the lump anymore. The mattress had started making noises. It began subtly, soft indentations, like weight shifting slowly from one side to the other. I would hear it most around 2 in the morning, a slow, deliberate press. Release. Press as if something inside was adjusting itself for comfort. When I pressed my palm against the mattress, the movement would stop, but the warmth underneath would remain, radiating up through the sheets like something alive. The room smelled different now. A faint, metallic tang lingered in the air, not unlike blood. It would get worse at night, especially if I closed the door, as though the thing in the bed exhaled its own odor. I took to keeping the window open, even though the cold air made my teeth chatter. One night, I decided to force myself to watch it. I sat in the armchair in the corner of the room, phone camera ready, flashlight in hand. Midnight came and went. My eyelids grew heavy, but then I heard it, slow, rhythmic, unmistakable. Breathing. Not mine. It came from deep inside the mattress. Not the sound of fabric shifting or springs creaking, but a wet, hollow inhalation followed by a drawn-out exhale. The sheets actually rose and fell slightly with the sound, the lump inflating and deflating as though the mattress itself had grown lungs. I recorded a 30-second clip before my phone froze. Not crashed, froze. The frame on the screen was stuck on the exact moment the lump shifted toward the edge of the bed. I could still hear the breathing in the room, but on the video, there was only silence. I tried replaying it after a reboot, but the file was corrupted. The thumbnail was no longer my bed. It was a close-up of wrinkled, pale skin stretched over what looked like veins. That was when I noticed the sheets were different. The white cotton had taken on a faint pinkish hue, and in certain light, I could see thin red lines running through them. Not stains, something within the fabric itself, like fibers that had grown new channels. I ran my finger over one, and it felt faintly warm. 2 nights later, I woke up in the armchair to the sound of something wet dragging beneath the sheets. The lump was bigger now, noticeably higher than before. I could see an outline under the covers. Not a solid shape. Something segmented. Something shifting. And then it whispered. It was faint, so faint I thought I imagined it. A low rasping, like breath forced through teeth, forming words I couldn't quite understand. I crept closer, heart pounding, and it stopped breathing. The lump went still. That's when I realized the bed was no longer just containing it. The mattress was changing, expanding, becoming part of whatever was inside. The fabric along the side had begun to pulse ever so slightly, the stitching stretching and contracting like muscle fibers. That night, I slept in my car. The next morning, I went back in, determined to strip the bed completely and see what was underneath. I grabbed the sheets, yanked them off, and froze. There was no mattress anymore. It was gone, replaced by a smooth, fleshy surface, pale and hairless, with veins branching out in all directions. In the exact center was the lump, rising and falling as though it were breathing through the entire structure. And then it twitched twice like it knew I was looking. I backed out of the room, slammed the door, and wedged a chair under the handle. But the breathing didn't stop. It came through the walls now. The night after I tore open the sheets, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. The space in my bed where the lump had been looked empty in the dim light, but it wasn't. It felt occupied, like something invisible still lay there, just under the surface, watching me without eyes. I kept the lights on and sat with my back against the wall, knees pulled to my chest, every muscle tight. Every time I blinked for too long, my vision swam and I swore the outline of the lump rippled in the blankets again. I had told no one. My friends wouldn't believe me, and my parents lived too far away to do anything but insist I see a doctor. There was no doctor for this. No words to describe the weight of knowing something was sharing my bed and growing. At around 3:40 a.m., my phone camera went off on its own. No sound of shutter, just the screen lighting up with the image. A single photograph in the gallery, my bed, taken from the exact angle I was sitting. Only, there was no me in it. The bed was occupied by a massive bulge, larger than I had ever seen it, stretching the blanket upward like a corpse trying to sit up. The blanket's fabric was pulled tight enough to show the faint outline of fingers pressing from inside. I dropped the phone. My first instinct was to run, but my legs wouldn't move. It was like the air had thickened into syrup. Something in the room didn't want me leaving. My ears popped like the pressure had changed, and there was a faint rhythmic sound. Bottom, bottom. It wasn't my heart. The sound was coming from a lump. Each beat made the blanket twitch. I could see it growing slowly, pulsing outward, as if whatever was inside it was feeding on something, air, heat. Maybe me. By 4:15, the top of the lump was nearly level with my chest, even though I hadn't touched the blanket. The heartbeat was louder now, almost in sync with my breath, as if it was copying me. I backed toward the door, finally able to move, but my phone buzzed in my pocket before I could turn the knob. A new message, no number, just an image. It was my bed, but not from here. The photo had been taken from under the blanket. I could see the fabric overhead, the dim glow of my lamp bleeding through, and in the corner of the photo, my own legs sitting exactly as I was now. And between them, stretched along the sheet, was an arm. Pale, veinless. The fingers were splayed open, as though it had just reached up to touch me. I looked at the bed. The lump had gone completely still. I didn't sleep the night after the arm appeared in that photo. The idea that something was right there between me and the mattress, under the sheets, was enough to keep my spine rigid for hours. I stayed awake until sunrise, but sometime around 5 a.m., I must have lost consciousness sitting against the wall. When I woke, my neck ached, and the morning light was pouring in through the blinds. The bed was flat again, perfectly flat. No lump, no indentation. For a few minutes, I tried to convince myself it had all been in my head, that exhaustion and stress had twisted my perception. But when I stood, the bed sheets seemed slightly damp. Not with water, with warmth. And the smell, not rot, not sweat, something faintly sweet and metallic like blood that had been sitting too long. I stripped the bed down to the bare mattress. I half expected to see some grotesque tunnel in the padding, but there was nothing, just clean, white fabric. I washed everything twice, cranked the heater, and decided I wouldn't sleep in that room again until I figured this out. That night, I stayed on the couch. I kept every light in the apartment on and my phone in my hand. Around 1:15 a.m., I heard it. Not from the bedroom, from beneath the couch. A slow, dragging inhale, like a person breathing while half asleep. I froze. The air felt heavier, thicker, the way it does when someone's standing just behind you. My fingers hovered over the flashlight button on my phone, but I didn't press it. The sound grew louder. Inhale, pause, inhale. And then faint pressure under my legs. The cushion began to rise just slightly in the shape of something pressing upward from inside the couch. I bolted, ran to the bedroom, not because I thought it was safer, but because it was the only room with a lock. I slammed the door and leaned against it, tried to breathe quietly. The apartment went silent except for my pulse in my ears. 2:47 a.m. The phone buzzed. Another photo from an unknown number. It was me, taken through the bedroom door, only from inside the room, facing me. I hadn't heard the door open. The image was blurry, like it had been taken mid-movement, but one detail was sharp. The bed was behind me, and there was a lump in it again. Not just a mound this time, a silhouette. My silhouette. I turned slowly toward the bed. The blanket was rising, stretching, forming a perfect human shape lying on its side, facing me. Same height, same proportions. Even the slope of the shoulders looked familiar. And then it twitched, not a random movement, an imitation. It turned its head exactly the way I had just turned mine. I stepped back. It shifted one arm over the top of the blanket, letting me see the shape of the hand pressing through the fabric. It wasn't pale anymore, it was my hand, down to the veins and the faint scar across the knuckle. It was copying me, growing into me. The air in the room became ice cold. My breath came out in faint clouds. The lump sat up. My shape, perfectly upright now. The blanket draped over it like a shroud. Underneath, I could hear the faint friction of skin moving against fabric. It swung its legs over the side of the bed in the exact way I had countless mornings. The sound of its feet touching the floor was muffled, wrong, like something soft pressing down instead of bone and flesh. I backed against the wall, clutching my phone, but my hand was shaking so hard I could barely keep it steady. I snapped a picture anyway, and the flash went off, blinding me for half a second. When my vision cleared, the bed was empty. There was movement in the mirror. Not in front of it, inside it. My reflection wasn't matching me anymore. While I stood frozen with my phone raised, the version of me in the mirror slowly lowered its hand, tilting its head with that same jerky twitch the lump had made when I first saw it. The blanket was still draped over my reflection's shoulders. It stepped closer to the glass until its face filled the frame. My face, my eyes, my skin, but too smooth, too perfect, like an unfinished copy. And the mouth. The mouth stretched into a smile I knew I wasn't making. Then the glass bulged outward, not cracked, pushed. My reflection's face pressed forward until the surface dimpled, like something was trying to squeeze through. The sound was wet, sliding, accompanied by the faint heartbeat I had heard nights ago. I ran. I didn't even grab my keys. I didn't stop until I was outside, barefoot, gasping in the freezing air. It's been 3 weeks. I've been staying at a friend's place, sleeping on their couch. I keep the lights on every night, but sometimes I wake up to find the blanket already shaped to my body before I've even moved. And last night, My friends said they saw me get up and walk to the bathroom around 3 a.m. I never got up.